I have an aunt. She's my godmother. One of the things that I learned about her early on was that she made deals with all the animals that lived in her house. They had a huge dog kennel there on the property, so they had to keep all these 100 dogs quiet. She had very explicit agreements with them. She always told me animals need a job, and so they had to keep all these 100 dogs quiet. The dogs had places to be and things to do, and they just made it really clear and straightforward.
Nice. And were the dogs quiet?
Yeah, the dogs were quiet.
Wow.
They had this rock the size of your palm, and they'd pick it up and knock it once on the countertop, and all the dogs would go silent. That was how strong their alliance was.
Wow. Massively useful thing.
Hi. Welcome to another massively useful thing. I'm your host, Meg.
And I'm Tina.
And today we're going to talk about
designing the alliance, a massively useful thing.
Part of what you're doing when you're building an alliance is you are taking the weight off of all of the assumptions you make about your relationships with people, or like that you all want the same thing on vacation, or that you all want the same thing for this podcast. It's important to check in, even when it seems so obvious that we want the same thing. You're still checking and saying, I'm going to put it into words, and I'm going to say it out loud to someone's face. And that way, we have the best possible chances of being on the same page. There's a power in designing the alliances, even with the animals you live with. And then we get to hold the conditions and the container of that alliance, and it helps us sort of see where our boundaries are and what feels comfortable and safe. So designing an alliance is also like just building a good fence. It's like the Robert Frost saying, good fences make good neighbors. Mm-hmm. When there's a boundary that both people can see, it creates a sense of
safety,
comfort, being held, or clarity.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about when you and Anne and I went to Mexico City. So 3 adult women sharing what turned out to be a relatively small but adorable Airbnb in a beautiful part of the city.
In the Marxist neighborhood.
We were very close to Frida Kahlo's house. And we all have different approaches to travel. We have different internal clocks. I shut down by about 10 o'clock. You've sent me emails after midnight that I read the next morning when I'm up at the crack of dawn. And I remember we did something very helpful, and it made me feel more excited about the trip, which was we sat down, or virtually on our phones, talked through what did we need from each other in order to make this an amazing experience. And I remember saying, I go from on to off. So when my off button is tripped, then I hit a wall, and I usually just need to be by myself and go to bed. And you guys both really honored that, which made me enjoy the trip even more and not have a sense of expectation that, oh, now I have to go out and drink tequila and I'm just going to get drunk and throw up and they're going to have to carry me home. And that's not fun for anybody. So that didn't happen, fortunately. And it was a really great time. And I would go anywhere.
I'm going to say unfortunately, because I really wanted to see you dancing on the bar.
Yeah.
And that was part of my Mexico City dream that we didn't get to build into the alliance, was you really
letting loose.
Yeah. Yeah. Letting loose in a very public display of just complete abandon.
I'm letting loose on this podcast. So designing the alliance, it means you are defining what this relationship means to both of you. And a great way of thinking about an alliance is that there's actually 3 parties that are part of it. It's you, it's the other person, and then it's the relationship. So the relationship itself, we both choose to empower as a third part of this triangle that is the alliance. And designing the alliance means we define the boundaries. We define sort of the guardrails, if you think about bowling. We are consciously and deliberately defining norms that work for us.
You can also design an alliance just for purposes of a trip, like in Tina's story. There are so many family vacations that would have benefited or still could benefit from designing an alliance. Just articulate people's expectations and their hopes for the trip and their intentions for the trip, or giving them a second to pause and reflect on how they want to be with their people when they're on the trip.
Great point. In a long-term friendship, relationship, marriage, you can have an alliance around something very specific. Any kind of larger relationship, there could be multiple alliances, each with its own unique set of norms and boundaries and definitions. So we could do one for this podcast.
Yes, and alliances are a building block. You can have so many of them. They can all be operating at the same time. They can operate in sequence. The practice we're really trying to build right here, the muscle that we're trying to grow, is this idea of pausing to reflect on what you need and articulating what you need to the other person in the relationship, which could be, your whole big family, or it could be just your spouse, or it could be just your work partner, or just your kid.
I'm thinking about that rule around letting family stay, since we both live far away from our families of birth, letting family stay only 3 days or 3 nights. Without realizing it, we're designing an alliance. And I remember doing this with my mother-in-law, because I have about a 3-day tolerance for just about anybody. And then I need some alone Tina time, probably because I'm a double Scorpio. So my mother-in-law used to come over and she'd stay for a week, 8 days, with this idea that she loves being with us, and it's such a long trip from Detroit. Really? No, it's not, but okay. And I would start to go batshit crazy by about day 4 and start to get mean to everybody and isolate myself. And then we just sat down and we said, this is going to work out so much better for both of us if you can come out here more frequently, but stay for less time. And once we designed that alliance, and we had to be vulnerable with each other and admit that we might be hurting each other's feelings, but here's what we needed from each other, it worked out so much better. So I'm very grateful to her that she was willing to design that and stay less time, because then it was still special and it was still fun, and I didn't hit my wall until after she had left.
And she didn't hit her wall either. I mean, she got to feel welcome. She didn't have to deal with you feeling your mood or having any of that. Enter the picture.
Right. And in a small house.
You're on top of each other.
Exactly. Why don't we role model? So in our tradition of making the massively useful thing real, let's ask each other some questions that would help us define the alliance that we are creating as friends to create this podcast.
Sounds great.
That's good.
What are our highest hopes for this podcast?
Great question. One of my highest hopes is to continue to put my voice out there. And I always think about the scene in the Colin Firth movie, The King's Speech, where his speech therapist has been making him mad, and he finally says, he keeps asking him, why should I listen to you? And Colin Firth finally just says in a very exasperated tone, because I have a voice. And so putting my voice out there and sharing and having the courage to share my point of view. So putting my voice out there while having fun would be 2 higher aspirations.
For me, this podcast represents an opportunity to have fun and to be working in collaboration with other big, juicy brains that are fun to work with. Part of this alliance is about us continuing to ask ourselves, is this fun? Does it feel good? I don't want it to feel like a hassle or an obligation.
How about what's off limits?
What's off limits on the podcast?
What's off limits for you? What's a boundary that I shouldn't cross in order for us to be in a successful relationship?
I can honestly say I have no boundaries about what can or can't be said on this podcast.
Then
maybe protect minor children would be my only caveat. I'm an open book. I'm experimenting with radical accountability and vulnerability to who I am. This is a journey I'm on separately. And so for myself, I would say anything is fair game.
A boundary for me would be, I'm not quite there yet. I might need a pause or encouragement or time or planning to go more vulnerable. So it may not be vulnerability on the spot.
What else do we feel like needs to be said about our alliance?
Do the prep.
Ooh, do the prep is a great rule.
Do the prep.
So we'll really do the prep.
And own when we don't do the prep. Because these may sound off the cuff, but we actually do think about these beforehand and take notes and do some processing before we come on the air, because we're keeping these deliberately short so that we give you a massively useful thing, role modeled and explained so that you can use it in a very practical, pragmatic way right after listening to this.
And so if you take nothing else away from this massively useful thing on designing the alliance, don't take it for granted that you know how the other person feels or what they need. Bring it out into the open, ask the direct questions, be straightforward with your own desires.
So that was our massively useful thing. And I'm Tina Robinson.
And I'm Meg Buzzi. And we'll see you next time.
So in future episodes, perhaps we'll hear about the alliances you've designed with your chickens.
There's one hen in particular who has trouble following the terms of our alliance. But, you know, I mean, part of our alliance is we're not going to eat you.
They call it weights or rowdy, I call it finally free.
Massively
useful thing.
Raw, 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 creative. Ding!